welcome to our St. John Adult Forum Hour. We have Aaron Suomala Folkerds, Reverend Dr. Aaron Suomala Folkerds, pastor in the LCA for about 15 years now?
13 to be
13.
exact, a little over.
Yeah. So Aaron and I met when we were both at LSTC, and he served parishes in Minnesota and other places, but what's your current position now, Aaron?
Assistant professor at MSUM in the graduate counseling program. So teach counseling master's students.
Yep. So I was thinking as we approach the holidays, and some of us are dealing with family, being frustrated about not being able to connect, or sad, or whatever we might be experiencing, and then knowing that we have another holiday coming up where we might be experiencing the same thing, I thought Aaron might help talk us off the ledge and give us some good techniques and strategies on how to approach the upcoming holidays. So with that, welcome, Aaron. And do you want to be called Aaron, I'm assuming, or?
Yes, please. That'd be great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Aaron, and what we've typically done is we've had, we've gone till about 11:30. If you have any sort of a presentation, we usually start with that and then have questions at the end, but it's up to you if you want to let people ask as we go.
Yeah, we could just, I've got a presentation here. I can just truck on through that, and then, and I can say after too, if anybody has any questions. I thought it'd be fun just to do a quick round. We don't have a ton of people here, just to get to know people. Maybe just say your name and a fun fact about yourself. And maybe I could just call out names and then just kind of go that way, just to kind of keep things moving. So the first person that shows up here, I've got it in Brady Bunch view. So I've got all of you looking at, if you remember that great show from years ago. So I'm just going to go through here. First person I have here is Ginny. I suppose you don't have to say your name, but if you want to say.
I'm Ginny Duvall, and I've been cooking New York Times recipes about every day.
Nice. Very good. Very good. I just made a really killer tater tot hot dish yesterday.
You can talk, Rose.
I've been. Nice to meet you, Judy. Looks like you got a couple there.
Oh, yes, this is Alan. My wife, Judy, and I, we live in Horace, and as you heard, I like IPA beer.
Oh, nice. You're in good company. That's great. Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Looks like Gail have there next.
Oh, no.
You're still muted, Gail.
She's muted.
Yep, I'm trying to get to my mouse here to ask her to unmute. There.
Looks like you're muted there, Gail.
Can you hear me? I clicked on the ask to unmute. I'm not sure if she sees it or not.
Okay, well, that's all right.
There we go.
Oh,
I'm off. Sorry about that. We were chit-chatting here, so I thought I'd better put us on mute. Anyway, I'm Gail, and I was just saying how thankful I am for this time of year and this wonderful technology. We've had a little bit of a rough summer, but it's over, and we're on our way to health, and so we're thankful.
Great.
Of course, my name is Lynn. The sweetheart, of course.
Nice to meet you. And Wesley, looks like you're next there.
Okay. Well, I live pretty close to the church. Been a long time member. Been retired, and I really appreciate the choir service. So.
Right. Excellent. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
And Frederick's iPad.
Yeah.
That's us. Pretty and Fred.
Yes. And our youngest son's name is Brady, and it's his birthday. So we like it is a Brady day for us.
Yeah, it's his birthday today.
Today.
And also Charlotte Jacobson's birthday today too.
Exactly. Yes.
So it's a good day to have a birthday.
Yeah. My brother Mark's birthday is today too.
Really? Wow. How about that?
That's awesome.
Good day.
Good day. Thanks, Frederick's iPad. Jeannie.
Yeah, I'm Jeannie, and I've lived here maybe will be 4 years, I think, March 1st. And I just keep busy, I guess. Talking to my talking on the phone to my old teacher friends and sewing and reading and cooking and whatever else.
Nice. Nice to
And
meet
Jeannie
you.
has an amazing pickled beet recipe.
Ooh,
Ah, there you go.
nice to meet you. Carol,
Yes, good morning.
good morning.
I'm just enjoying life from my recliner.
All right. And Elwood.
I'm Elwood, or many people call me Woody. And I'm especially thankful for all the doctors and the nurses and all those who have been on the front line through this whole pandemic. They have done a tremendous job, and I am so grateful for all they have done.
Absolutely.
With you.
Good reminder. Thank you. And let's see, Marlene, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can. Yep, we can hear you, Marlene.
Okay.
All right. So, did you want to share one fun fact about yourself?
I don't know what that would be.
Playing the piano.
Oh, there you go. Playing the piano. That's great. Catherine.
Hi everyone, Catherine. So fun fact is I work at MSUM where Aaron now teaches. So
Yeah.
that's kind of fun.
Very cool. And I know the next.
And I just want to add one more thing too. And my mom goes to
Good Shepherd.
Good Shepherd?
No, Christ the King. There we go.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's where I was.
My mom knows who you are too. Joanne Carlblum. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, sure. Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Small world. Well, I know the next two here. Yeah. Diane, hi. Good to see you.
Yeah, I didn't know if you'd recognize us on Zoom. Dennis and Diane Wiesenborn. And my fun fact is that I've known Aaron longer than any of you, I'm pretty sure. He and his wife were co-pastors at my parents' rural church in southern Minnesota where I grew up, Lake Hanska Lutheran. And Aaron actually preached my father's funeral sermon.
Wow.
So we go way back.
Absolutely.
Great to see you, Aaron. And
Yeah.
hi to Mary and Paul.
Yes, thank you so much. So good to see you guys.
Yeah, hello for me too, Aaron. It's so good to see you again. And one fun fact that I'll share is that we have our oldest son and daughter-in-law and grandson have been staying with us for the last 9 months now. Their home is Qingdao, China. And since the pandemic, they've not been able to get back there. So.
Sure.
Well,
very good. Yeah, so good to see you guys. And Mike.
Good to see everybody. Thanks for doing this, Aaron. And I guess, let's see, what would be my fun fact?
Nice.
I guess I'm just waiting for the ice to freeze on the lake so I can go ice fishing. So that's what I'm looking forward to. That's a good physical distancing sport.
Absolutely. I'm actually
Susan won't go with me, that's for sure.
Nice to meet you. Donna, did you want to share one fun fact?
That I don't know any fun facts, I guess. Can't think of anything.
Thanks for reading this morning.
Well, yeah, it seemed kind of goofed up, but I guess that's okay.
Got it done. Very good. Nice to meet you, Donna. And then Frayne, is that how you say your name? Frayne Olson?
Yes, that's correct. Let me turn my video on here. Hi, everybody. Frayne and Jill Olson. We're joining today and learning more.
Get more.
Fun fact, it is our 30th wedding anniversary coming up this week. So we're hoping to celebrate.
30th wedding anniversary.
Nice.
Frayne Olson.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Right.
Claire, did you want to share a fun fact about yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Claire, and my husband Zach is here with me as well. And I guess our fun fact is that we have a little orange cat named Reggie who is currently asleep at my feet, and it's very cute.
Nice. Very cool. Nice to meet you. And then last but not least, Eric, the other Eric.
Aaron, isn't it?
Aaron might be. Yeah, oh, there he is.
I really have nothing to share.
All right.
Thing to say.
And Pastor Eric, did you want to share a fun fact?
Yeah, I'm planning to cook 2 Thanksgiving meals this
All right.
week. So, and by the way, everyone, just a quick note, I'm going to mute pretty much everybody. And so if you want to ask a question, you have to unmute yourself and then ask, okay?
All right, sounds good. Well, nice to meet you all. So the first thing I want to mention as far as strategies for taking care of yourself during difficult times during a pandemic and also around these holidays where we're not able to be with each other is just that importance of relationship and just being able to connect with one another, just like we were doing, is so incredibly important. You know, to stay out there and keep connecting with people. You know, they've done a ton of research around why people get better in counseling. And what they've discovered, it doesn't have terribly a lot to do with a particular theory or different treatment modalities, but the number one reason why people get better in counseling is because of relationship. Relationship is just so critical. And the wonderful thing about technology is that we're able to stay connected even in these days of social distancing. So that's kind of the number one thing to do. And we were just practicing that right now. So it's so great to get to know all of you and make some connections with people and get to see old friends as well. So for my presentation today, I'm going to be kind of giving you a potpourri of some different mental health topics, things to be aware of. The world of mental health can be sometimes difficult to navigate. So not only giving you some ideas and resources about how to navigate the times that we're living in right now, but just some general information that might be helpful for you, maybe for yourself or perhaps helping a family member or a friend navigate the mental health system. So we'll be talking about that. But before we go into that, I'm just going to share a little bit about who I am and some of my credentials. So I've been working now for 2 years as a counselor educator, now starting into my 3rd year at Minnesota State. I taught for 1 year at University of Mary over on the Fargo side, and then started in August of 19 working at Minnesota State as an assistant professor in the counseling graduate program. I've been ordained as a ELCA Lutheran pastor for the last 13 years. So I worked down in southern Minnesota, also worked at Christ the King in Moorhead for a few years. So I've had kind of a weird circuitous career. I've worked both in mental health and also in the church. And also as a chaplain. I did a year chaplain residency on the south side of Chicago at Christ Medical Center. Also worked as a mental health clinician at Prairie St. John's over in Fargo. Worked in needs assessment, worked in a college counseling center at Minnesota State University, Mankato. That's where I did my doctoral degree in counselor education. And then also my master's in mental health counseling was down in Mankato. Started down there when I was a pastor in southern Minnesota. That's the connection there. And then went to LSTC for my seminary degree and University of Minnesota Morris for my undergraduate degree. So currently I'm also working as an embedded counselor with the Moorhead Police Department and their wellness coordinator. So that's my part-time gig. Put in about 10 hours a week there. So I've got an office at the police department and do a lot of training with our police officers around mental health. Just mental health issues that they see out in the community, and also how to take care of themselves in a very difficult job. In Moorhead, our police officers and police officers across the country are responding to a ton of mental health cases. In 2019, we responded to over 600 calls for suicidal ideation and over 1,200 calls, mental health related calls. And I know Fargo Police, I'm sure, is responding to a similar amount as well. So I do a lot with our police department in training around those mental health issues. I also worked with them as a volunteer chaplain before beginning that part-time job. Also work with FM Ambulance as a a consultant around mental health issues, volunteer, and also a volunteer chaplain. I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist and a licensed DMT as well. So I have particular interest in working with first responders. And so that's been fun. This is my family. My wife's a pastor. This is our exchange student from Slovakia. She's been with us for about 1.5 years and will be with us for another half a year or so. She's a student at Oak Grove. My son Paul is in the 3rd grade at Ellen Hopkins. And that's at a wedding that we went to last summer before all this pandemic stuff hit. And then me, of course, with Scorch. You got to represent Minnesota State University Moorhead. So Dragon Pride. So like I said, this is going to be kind of a mental health 101. We'll talk a little bit about navigating the mental health system. The 3 most common diagnoses in mental health are major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. However, some people are dropping the disorder and just calling it post-traumatic stress. And that's something that we talk a lot about in with my first responders is strategies to avoid that PTSD, that PTS, post-traumatic stress. Suicide assessment is something that I talk about in all the presentations I give. I think it's really important to have an idea about just the basics in doing a suicide assessment and encouraging people to ask those questions just because we're seeing such an increase in the suicide rate. We're certainly seeing that over on the Moorhead side. Like I'd said, our police officers responded to 600 suicidal ideation calls in 2019. So that's important to be aware of. Talk a little bit about cognitive distortions and then strategies for alleviating anxiety and depression and just being able to take care of yourself. And of course, much, much more with that. So this first part is talking a little bit about navigating the mental health system. And it can be kind of confusing for people. And just partly because there's just so many different types of counselors out there. There's so many different types of services to access. And there's different types of practitioners that are providing services. So this slide talks a little bit about all of the different types of counselors out there. First, there are the licensed psychologists. And all of these licenses are licensed at the state level too. So licensed psychologists or LPs typically do a lot more with assessment. And so anytime there's a psych evaluation, those sorts of things, that's a psychologist who is doing that. So they're the ones that will write the reports for courts or other agencies whenever there's a major assessment or evaluation that needs to be done. That's kind of one of their key things that they do. They also provide counseling services as well, of course. So to become a licensed psychologist, you need to have a doctoral degree. And you can get a PhD, or they also have a PsyD as well. A PsyD is much more practical degree that they get. So that's a licensed psychologist. The next one is, this is the program that I teach in. We're training people to become licensed professional counselors, which is kind of the basic or the initial license. And then LPCC is licensed professional clinical counselor. And so to become a LPC or LPCC, you need to have a master's degree. And then beyond that, you need to get another 200 hours of supervision. So you've got to meet with someone who's an official supervisor, and then another 4,000 hours of practical experience. So essentially 2 years of work in the mental health system beyond your master's degree. And then there's also a licensed independent clinical social worker. That's also a master's level clinician. And so they come from more of a social work background. And perhaps they'll spend more time paying attention to what's going on in your environment that might be contributing to your anxiety or depression or whatever mental health issue you might be dealing with. Then there's psych nurse practitioners, basically nurses that have had additional training in psychiatry to be able to provide medications. So they work a lot with psychiatrists. It used to be that psychiatrists would do more with talk therapy, operating very similar to a psychologist. But nowadays, psychiatrists, one of their primary things that they do is work on medication management. Right now, it's very challenging to see a psychiatrist. A lot of psychiatrists are booking out 3 or 4 months out. Even we've noticed with counselors are booking out a couple of months these days. We've seen a huge increase in people accessing mental health services. So it can be challenging for people to get in to see a counselor. That's never been the case. It's usually been a couple of weeks you can get in to see a counselor. Now it's becoming more and more. So there's a huge need for counselors, without a doubt. And I think especially in this time of the pandemic, I think another kind of pandemic that potentially might be coming out of the current pandemic that we're in is a mental health pandemic. I think we're going to see an increase in mental health needs even more, just given the challenging time we're living in now. The last one is an LMFT, and that's the training that I got and the license I hold, licensed marriage and family therapist. So as an LMFT, I'm able to provide individual counseling services just like an LPCC, but then also have additional training in working with couples and also with families from a family systems perspective. So to become an LMFT, you need at least a master's degree, and then another couple hundred hours of supervision plus 4,000 hours of experience. So that's just kind of a little bit of just a basic understanding of the different types of providers out there. All do excellent work, but hopefully that's helpful just to kind of be aware of that. So there are kind of 2 different places that perhaps you might be visiting when you see a counselor. One would be just a basic office visit. A process of counseling, typically, average number of sessions that you would see a counselor around 10 to 12. First couple sessions are usually about assessment, working on goals. Counseling in this day and age definitely takes on more of a solution-focused orientation. Sometimes someone's mental health needs might be much more significant, where they need to go to a hospital for an emergency visit. We're very lucky in our community to have Prairie St. John's, which is a mental health hospital. Not a lot of communities have a hospital like that. Also, Sanford is another place that has beds for psych patients. Right now, there's a huge need for mental health beds in hospitals. Prairie St. John's, for example, will receive patients from Minneapolis, Duluth, from Western North Dakota, Western South Dakota, from all over. And so there's just a huge need. So a lot of people are actually coming to Fargo for mental health needs. Typically, the reason you'd be hospitalized would be there's some kind of psychotic episode, or if someone is having significant suicidal ideation with intent and a plan is why people get hospitalized. They also have a partial hospitalization, where if people don't meet criteria to be in the hospital, they can be admitted to a day program. And the Prairie St. John's is also a very great place in terms of they're open 24/7. So if you know of someone that is in a mental health crisis, if they're having significant suicide ideation with a plan, that's a place where they can get an assessment at any time of the day. So just some basics there. The next section, talking a little bit about some of the different diagnoses out there. We use the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, version 5, for being able to diagnose people with different disorders. And there's all sorts of criteria for diagnosing people. This is just an example of what major depressive disorder looks like. And basically it just lists the different symptoms. And if people meet criteria for that diagnosis, then you can diagnose them with that particular disorder. The other key thing is that you're not able to diagnose people with the disorder unless it's having a significant impact on their activities of daily living. So it's affecting their ability to have relationships in their family, jobs, what have you. So you can take a look here. In order to be diagnosed with major depressive disorder, for example, you need to meet 5 of the 9 criteria during the same 2-week period. So, for example, things like depressed mood, markedly diminished interest or pleasure in all or almost all activities, significant weight loss or increase, insomnia or hypersomnia, psychomotor agitation or retardation, fatigue or loss of energy every day. So it goes on from there. So that's kind of the basic way. I won't spend too much time on this, but just so you kind of understand how different disorders are diagnosed. We see a lot of major depressive disorder, or it's sometimes called MDD. Generalized anxiety disorder is another one that we see a lot of. They're doing a ton of research about anxiety in our culture, and rates of anxiety are just skyrocketing across our country. I read somewhere that the United States has the most anxiety per capita than all the countries across the world. So this is something we're seeing a lot of. And so these are the criteria then for diagnosing generalized anxiety disorder. So those are the 2 probably most common disorders that we see. And then working with first responders, post-traumatic stress disorder is another disorder that I see a lot of. And so that's the description there in terms of meeting criteria for that. So those are 3 major disorders that we see a lot of. The next section talks a little bit about suicide assessment. And so I just want to touch on a few things there. Just some basic statistics. Suicide was the 10th leading cause of death overall in the United States, claiming the lives of over 48,000 people. Yet it's not something that we perhaps talk about all that much. So one of my goals is to just encourage people to talk about this and to be aware of it as well. Suicide was the 2nd leading cause of death among individuals between the ages of 10 and 34, and the 4th leading cause of death among individuals between the ages of 35 and 54. We're also seeing rates of suicide ideation going up significantly. Was looking at some data recently in North Dakota. Among data was about adolescent girls and their thoughts around suicide. 40% of adolescent girls in the state of North Dakota have had suicidal ideation of some kind. 10% of adolescent girls in North Dakota have attempted suicide. So that's a significant statistic. So we're seeing people younger and younger having suicidal ideation and thoughts of suicide. So there are more than 2.5 times as many suicides in the United States as there were homicides. Mentioned this already, 600 suicide calls in Moorhead, around 1,100 mental health, a little over mental health related calls in 2019. So more and more police officers are kind of on the front lines of mental health issues. One of the suicide assessments that's used in our community, this is used by Fargo PD, Fargo Fire, Moorhead Fire, Moorhead Police Department, West Fargo uses this as well, and FM Ambulance, is the Columbia Suicide Severity Scale. This is probably the best scale that is out there. It's been empirically based in research and something that everybody carries. Any first responder in our community will carry this scale on a laminated card. And so these are the questions that they're asking. And our ERs also use this scale in our community. So it's kind of nice because it gives sort of a universal language for discussing some of these issues. And so this is kind of the basic question. These are the basic questions that are asked of the individual to assess for suicidal ideation. So number 1, have you wished you were dead or wished you could go to sleep and not wake up? Have you actually had thoughts about killing yourself? And then it gives you some direction. If yes to 2, answer questions 3, 4, 5, and 6. So have you thought about how you might do this? Have you any intention of acting on these thoughts of killing yourself, as opposed to you have the thoughts but definitely would not act on them? Number 5, have you started to work out or worked out the details of how to kill yourself? Do you intend to carry out this plan? And then number 6, have you done anything, started to do anything, or prepared to do anything to end your life? So this gives the individual doing the assessment some language and kind of a uniform way of doing that assessment. And so that's been a really good thing for our community, that we have this universal tool that everybody is using, who are on the front lines of mental health issues. Other forms of assessment, QPR is one that's often taught to lay people. So to ask the question, are you having thoughts of killing yourself, to persuade them to get help, and then to refer to an emergency room of some kind. Where in our country, that's sort of the #1 place that people go when they are having suicidal thoughts, is to go to the emergency room or to go to a place like Prairie St. John's. Another technique is just tip. Are you having thoughts? Is there intent to carry out those thoughts? And do you have a plan? Are just some basic forms of assessment. So now I want to move a little bit more to talking about stress and talking more about different strategies for how you can manage living in these difficult times during this pandemic. And these are wellness strategies that can be helpful, especially if you're struggling with different mental illness if you have mental illness related struggles. These are also a lot of strategies that I teach to our police officers in our wellness program. But first, it's important to have a little idea of what stress is. And I'm sure all of you have experienced stress. I was teaching, I teach assessment this semester, and I have 2 sections of assessment that I'm teaching. So basically how to assess people for mental health disorders. And we've been doing everything online, and I had everybody up in the Brady Bunch mode. And I said, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling kind of overwhelmed and stressed these days. And all of a sudden, when I said that, all of these heads nodded. And, so you could tell that everybody had been experiencing that stress as well. I think this is just kind of universal these days. So what is stress then? Stress is a psychological and physical response to change, whether that change is actually happening now or anticipated in the future. So basically, again, it's a psychological and physical response to change. And we've had a lot of rapid changes in this day and age, where we have to, do social distancing, changing how we do worship in church, changing how we do school. Now with the holidays coming up, not being able to spend holidays with family during Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up. So that's all creating stress, and that we experience that stress both physically and psychologically. Everyone experiences positive and negative stress in life. So there are positive stressors as well. Getting a new job, for example, could be a positive stressor. Having all of your family come over at Christmas, that can be a positive stressor. There's those positive stressors as well. Continuous severe day-to-day stress or a single traumatic incident can be seriously damaging to physical and mental health when that stress begins to take over. This is a graphic that I use a lot with our police officers to think a little bit about stress. So there's this eustress. This is the good stress, where you're energized, focused, work feels effortless. So that's that good stress. Stress can be a good thing too, can keep us sharp. Where we get concerned is when that stress begins to take over and becomes distress, where you become fatigued and exhausted, where breakdown and burnout comes in. This next section talks a little bit about how our bodies react to stress. We have the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system gets activated when in those emergency situations. Think about fight or flight. The sympathetic emergency system, sympathetic nervous system rather, gets you kind of on edge, gets you ready. So your pupils become dilated, heart beats faster and faster, your airways relax, you're able to breathe more deeply, inhibits digestion, increases blood flow to the skeletal muscles. Whereas the parasympathetic nervous system is the part that calms you down. So constricts pupils, beats more slowly, constrict airways, stimulates digestion, reduces blood flow to skeletal muscles. The problem is that when you're stressed all the time, your sympathetic nervous system is the one that is always gets activated. And that can take a toll on your body. So some of the strategies that we teach people are all about how to activate that parasympathetic nervous system to be able to calm our bodies. Because again, we experience stress physically and psychologically. So a lot of these strategies we'll be talking about here in the next few minutes are about activating this parasympathetic nervous system to be able to calm your body down. But before we go into the strategies for how to calm yourself and how to deal with the time we're living in, it's important to be a little bit aware of kind of general mental health warning signs. And the first slide here talks about behavioral symptoms. So these are strategies that we teach people, or excuse me, symptoms that we teach people in order to help them be aware, more self-aware and mindful of what they're experiencing. So the first one talks about behavioral symptoms. So sleep is a big one. If someone is struggling with sleep, that can significantly affect one's mental health and physical health. So that's the first symptom there. Sleep disturbances, appetite changes, either eating too much or too little, kind of that hyper-vigilant approach to life, always on edge. Along with that would be jumpiness, that exaggerated startle response. That's especially common in people who are experiencing PTSD symptoms. And then other negative coping that people might be engaging in. Smoking, drinking, acting out can go along with that negative coping. So that's behavioral. The next set of symptoms would be physical symptoms. So that would be things like sweating, rapid heartbeat, difficulty breathing, dizziness, aches and pains, weakened immune system can go along with that as well. The next one is behavioral symptoms. So sleep disturbances, nightmares, appetite changes, hypervigilance. Oops, I think we went on that one already. Went the wrong way. Sorry about that. Cognitive symptoms would be lowered self-esteem, increased self-doubt, loss of interest in previously enjoyed activities, repetitive images of past trauma, thoughts of harming yourself or others. And then along with the cognitive symptoms would be cognitive distortion. So one of the things that happens when you're experiencing symptoms of anxiety or depression is the way that we think about life becomes distorted. And we won't get too lost in the weeds in this section, but just a few examples. Emotional reasoning, your feelings are guiding your interpretation of reality. Things like catastrophizing, only focusing on the worst possible outcome. Nothing good can come of 2020. It's just going to get worse and worse. Overgeneralizing, perceiving a global pattern of negatives on the basis of a single incident. Dichotomous thinking, or black and white thinking, that all or nothing thinking. Viewing events or people in all or nothing terms. Mind reading can be another one. Assuming that you know what people think without having sufficient evidence of their thoughts. Labeling, assigning global negative traits to yourself or others. Negative filtering can be another distortion. Nothing good will ever come of this. Discounting positives, claiming that the positive things you or others do are trivial so that you can maintain a negative judgment, and then blaming. So it's somebody else's fault. So where you blame others. So one of the things that we do in therapy is we help people to become aware of their cognitive distortions, kind of their stinking thinking. would be another way of talking about it. Because the way we think and the way we behave are connected. So if we can help people to think more clearly and look at life in a way that's not distorted, that's going to help them have more positive behavior, help them to deal better with their anxiety, and also or their depression or whatever symptoms they might be having. So that's the cognitive section. Then the emotional symptoms might be irritability, oversensitivity, emotional unpredictability, anxiety, and then sadness and depression. I'm sure all of you are familiar with these things, but hopefully it's helpful to see them written down in this way. Social symptoms, withdrawing, distrust of others, projection of blame and rage, anger towards others, decreased interest in intimacy, perhaps change in parenting style, becoming overprotective. So those are symptoms that people experience. So what can we do to manage these symptoms? So this next section is to talk a little bit about strategies for managing mental illness and symptoms of mental illness. The first one is very simple: drink water. It's good for you physically. It also, it's a way to stop, hold your breath, and to breathe in and then exhale. So just simple little things that you can do. And drinking water can be very healthy for you physically as well. So this is something I teach our officers quite a lot to keep drinking water throughout your shift, throughout your day. So another thing that we teach officers and the people I work with in first responders is we call it tactical breathing. One thing that I've noticed, if you throw the word tactical in front of anything for police officers, they'll pay attention. So we don't have a wellness program. We have a tactical wellness program. If we just had a wellness program, they would probably walk out the door and think I was crazy. But if I call it tactical wellness, suddenly they're in. So if I talked about breathing, they probably would walk out the door. But if we have tactical breathing, then it's a good thing. And so this is basically a way to help activate that calming part of our nervous system, right? Where anytime you're breathing, you're activating the vagus nerve, and that's helping you to calm yourself down. It can slow your heart rate, slow your breathing. So the way it works is you breathe in through the nose for a 4 count, hold for 4, out through the lips for a 4 count, and then hold for another 4 seconds. So, and then you just keep repeating that for 5 minutes, and it can very effectively slow yourself down. Another thing that they've done is they've been doing some research in terms of people's vision. You know, when you're really on edge, your vision sort of narrows, and you don't have that same peripheral vision when your heart rate is up and you're breathing and you're kind of on edge. One thing that people have been doing is research on focusing in on opening up your peripheral vision, and just consciously thinking about and opening up your vision so you can see more expansively in front of you. Some researchers have shown that it can be just as effective as breathing, which is really interesting. So if you're not really wanting to do this breathing thing, that's another strategy that you can do that can be just as effective, just focusing on opening up your vision to a wider view, opening up that peripheral vision. So this next section, one of my favorite therapists is a guy named Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, who of course had the wonderful show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He talked a lot about the importance of labeling. I forgot to put in his name here, but this is a Mr. Rogers quote. Anything that's human is mentionable, and anything that is mentionable can be more manageable. When we talk about our feelings, they become less overwhelming, less upsetting, and less scary. The people we trust with that important talk can help us know that we are not alone. So it's one of my favorite quotes. Anything that's mentionable is manageable. So that labeling piece, labeling in a positive way. If you find yourself having some sort of emotional reaction to your stress, stop yourself and name that emotion. I'm afraid, I'm angry, Labeling helps you to distance yourself from the problem and can even give you a sense of control. So that's like one of the number one things that we try to help people do in therapy is just to be able to label what they're feeling. And when we can do that, it gives us a sense of control. Another thing too is hitting that pause button. Hitting that imaginary pause button several times a day. Could be for 5 seconds, 10 seconds or longer. Just stop what you're doing in the moment. And it's great with phones because you can even set a timer. Every 10 minutes, or excuse me, every hour, you can take 5 to 10 seconds just to ground yourself and hit that imaginary pause button. The next one would be seek and give social support. Attending events like this where you can be connected to family and friends. Relationship is so important. Mindfulness is another strategy that we talk a lot about in my work with first responders. Marines, police officers, EMTs are all growing in their use of mindfulness. It's even interesting. There's a couple of groups of Marines that are actually doing a lot with yoga. I think is it Paris Island, I think is one place where they're doing more with yoga and Marines because they found that can be incredibly helpful with mindfulness and also to deal with trauma. There's a great researcher named Bessel van der Kolk. He wrote the book, The Body Keeps Score. He's done a ton of work with PTSD. In fact, he helped to write the criteria for the diagnosis in the DSM. And he talks about how yoga is like one of the #1 tools to help people manage PTSD along with other different types of treatments. And so he also did a lot of work with Vietnam veterans and World War II veterans. And again, this mindfulness piece is important. And so this Dan Siegel got on this tactical thing too. He doesn't do mindfulness, but tactical mindfulness. And so this is something I talk about with our officers. So the first part of this strategy would be to pay attention to your senses. Would be step 1. What are you seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching? Pay attention to the interior of your body. Pay attention to your mental activity. What are you thinking? Pay attention to your relationships and family. And then finally, pay attention to where you see God. Where is God active in your life? The other piece would be to manage technology use. Find the right balance of using and not using technology. Sometimes it's just best to stay off social media and other websites. And we're doing more and more research around technology and how technology affects our mental health. There's a really great researcher out of San Diego, Dr. Jean Twenge. She wrote a book on how technology is affecting the new generation coming up. She calls it the iGen generation. And she has found a ton of evidence that looks at how social media, high use of social media can be related to anxiety and depression as well. So she's a huge advocate for getting people off of smartphones, getting people off of social media. So maintaining healthy technology use. Routines are very good for mental health. Diet is important. Work to maintain a healthy diet. Watch intake of substances of things like caffeine or alcohol. And then exercise is really important as well. They've done some research that shows that a half hour of exercise is the equivalent of taking like 1 SSRI, which is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which is medication that's given to people who struggle with depression to help increase serotonin levels, which can help people, which can help lessen people's depression symptoms. So exercise is incredibly effective. Other things, positive self-talk. Take time where you can reduce interruptions, reflect, stretch, and simply be. Talk with family and friends or seek out counseling if you need it. Food and sleep, eat well. Sleep is so incredibly important. Don't skip meals or sleep. These are work-related strategies. Set realistic self-expectations, have good boundaries. What are your job demands? Clarify role and duties. The schedule, the routine is so important. Another strategy is just to think of calming words, just words like calm or relax or peace, and to be able to meditate on that, or meditate on scripture that brings you peace and calm, or think of those favorite places that you've been. This is where I want to be right now, is on a beach in the Caribbean, sitting in a hammock and just enjoying life. So those calm images, those calm words, scriptures, songs can be really helpful to calm us. So this is talking a little bit about songs. Music can be really good to get in that relaxed state. And it's good to practice these different interventions every day, twice a day. And it's best in the morning and later in the afternoon. Research shows that practicing these self-care strategies are not all that effective right before you go to bed. But to start your day with one of these self-care strategies and then something in the afternoon. So don't do it right before bed, but to sometime in the beginning or midday is the best time to do it. There's more here. Gratitude is another piece that is really powerful. They've done a ton of research on gratitude and how gratitude can help us with our mental health. Researcher out of Nevada, his name is Emmons. I'm blanking on his first name. We'll just call him Dr. Emmons, E-E-M-O-N-S. He's done a ton of research around this. He's found that gratitude opens the door to more relationships. Thinking a new acquaintance makes them more likely to seek an ongoing relationship. Gratitude improves physical health. Some research even shows it can drop your blood pressure by something like 5 to 10 points. Just taking time to be to focus in on gratitude. And the way that he did his research is he had people write in a gratitude journal each day for 5 minutes. And so people that wrote in a gratitude journal would have these effects, like the one study that dropped blood pressure by 5 to 10 points. So it can have good psychological effects and also physical health effects as well. So just to each day, this is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Psalm 118. And so the Bible has scripture passages all over the place talking about the importance of gratitude, being grateful for God and for Christ in our lives. It's a great model for us in our spiritual practices. Gratitude improves physical health, makes us more happy, less depressed. Gratitude enhances empathy, reduces aggression. Gratitude helps with sleep. It helps with self-esteem as well. Also, gratitude increases mental strength. Research found that Vietnam War veterans with higher levels of gratitude experienced lower rates of PTSD. 2003 study found that gratitude was a major contributor to resilience following the terrorist attacks on September 11th. Recognizing all that you have to be thankful for, even during the worst of times, fosters resilience. And so one suggestion that this Dr. Emmons has is to keep a gratitude journal. And in the gratitude journal each day, you could write 3 things for which you are thankful for or grateful for. Do it at least 5 times a week and try to make each of those things unique. Variation, this is actually one thing that is good to do before you sleep, is to keep the gratitude journal, according to research. Before you go to sleep, journal 3 things that went well that day. Take a few minutes to journal why they were so important, and researchers have found that can help with one's sleep. Kind of covered some of those things, just the balance of it all. Physical health, good diet, control alcohol intake, interact with others in a supportive, meaningful way. Try to find the positive side to things in life, find balance. Random acts of kindness is another thing that can be helpful. Buy the coffee for the person behind you. Express gratitude, random praise to someone you encounter each day. Maybe write a positive email to someone. Can all be helpful. This is just a grounding technique, grounding yourself, taking a pause each day. What do you see in that moment? What are you hearing in that moment? What are you feeling in that moment? This last section talks a little bit about the importance of labeling. So anytime that you're putting on the brakes in your brain, when you could label an emotion system, that kind of activates the braking system of the brain. It helps slow down the reaction of the emotional seat of your brain, and you can literally help put yourself put the brakes on emotional reactions by learning to label feelings. And so the one technique that we teach is stop. So stop, take a breath, pull back, and then proceed. So the first part of that is just to stop in that moment when you're experiencing some kind of symptom. Take a breath. Notice your breathing as you breathe in and out. Observe your thoughts. What are you thinking in that moment? What are you reacting to? What are the sensations in your body? Is that a thought? Is that thought a fact or an opinion? And then to pull back, what's the bigger picture? What would a trusted friend say to me right now? How important would this be in 6 months' time? And then finally proceed. What is the best thing to do right now? What can I do that fits with my values? So another strategy. And then finally, relationship is key. Relationship in all aspects of life is critical. This is especially true in the world of policing, mental health, church world, whatever it may be. Relationship and counseling is key, like I had mentioned at the beginning. Relationship is the reason why people get better in counseling. And I think it's one of those universals. We need each other. We need to be in relationship. And I think Mother Teresa said it best when she said, if we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to each other. So may we always remember that we belong to each other and to take care of each other in this life. Relationship is so critical. And also as Christians, our relationship with Jesus Christ is what provides us our salvation and eternal life. And so that's central to our faith as well. And then resilience, we'll leave with this. Life is not about how fast you run or how high you climb, but how well you bounce. And so all of these different strategies helps us to build our resilience, our ability to bounce back in the face of adversity. So I think that is all I have. So I threw a lot at you in a short period of time, but we did it it's 11:28, so not too bad. So questions or comments that people have?
Just a reminder, you might have to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question.
Aaron, I thought it was really interesting that you're working with the police because of all the attention the police have had this year about how they handle things. And I just have a bunch of questions related to that issue, but I guess one of them is you're being there, you're helping their own mental health, and you're helping them maybe learn how to cope with other people's mental health issues. But other than having you there, are there things that should be happening or other places that people can call? I mean, it's shocking that so many people call the police about suicides, and suicide doesn't seem like the best use of police.
First link.
Yeah, I think somebody's saying First Link. That's another place that people can call. Just the way we have our mental health system set up, I dream of having, I've come from, the EMS background, emergency medical services, which is, responding to emergencies for people's physical health. I dream of a system where we could have something similar for people's mental health. There are a few places across the country. There's one, I believe it's in Eugene, Oregon, where this actually started 20 years ago, where they essentially have an emergency mental health system where people will, it's a counselor, licensed counselor, and then it's also a paramedic or like an EMT work together in hand in hand. And they go out and they respond to these situations, and they work very closely with police. So there are certain situations where police may need to come in order to create a safe scene. Perhaps a gun is involved or something where they need to secure that. And that's a model that's worked really, really well. They call it CAHOOTS. It's an acronym of some kind. And so that's one model that I've seen. Unfortunately, they're not very common across the country, those sort of situations, where it is police officers kind of have been fulfilling that. They've kind of been thrown into that role of responding to these mental health crises. But that's something that that's kind of one thing I would dream of doing, you know, even because I bring the EMT background as well. You know, I'm kind of wired to think in that way. Of developing some kind of emergency mental health model. I think it will come. The other piece along with that is we don't have a ton of places for people to go when they're having a mental health crisis. We have hospitals when people have significant you know, suicidal ideation with a plan, they go into a hospital, but we don't have other, you know, like respite care, for example. If we could have a place for people to go who they don't want to be alone. They want to feel safe where there's other people around. I believe there is something in Fargo. I'm blanking on it right now, but you know, I'm trying to remember. I think it's through Southeast Human Services. They do have some kind of mental health respite, but I don't think it's well known. We certainly don't have anything in Minnesota like that. But if we could do more with like respite care or like that middle ground, I think could be really, really important because we just don't have that. So I think that would be important along with the emergency mental health workers as well. And we do have some of that. There are, but it's just not, it's not very well funded, I think is part of the issue with that. We do have a mobile mental health over on the Minnesota side. But just because it's not very well funded, it may take an hour for people to get there, and you know their services are being stretched. We need to invest in mental health is a big part of this.
I think the thing that I've noticed is that we don't have the right mindset about mental health either. So I mean, who of us would go 10 years without seeing a medical doctor, right? We would go get our physical. Right. Maybe there's people going, well, I'm supposed to go see more than once in 10 years, but we need to have the same approach about getting physicals with a mental health professional, like once every 3 years, you know, it might be just an initial assessment meeting and the assessment is, yep, you're good, you know, but we're like, oh, I'm fine. You know, we don't count that that's something important that we need to have set up.
Aaron? I have a question about anxiety. You said that you know America has the highest rate of anxiety worldwide, and is there any reasons for our higher incidence of anxiety?
Yeah, I've got all sorts of hunches. Number one, you know, it kind of comes back to a relationship. You know, we are so incredibly divided right now. We're willing to divide up over everything and anything, you know, and I think that I got to believe that that's part of it. You know, like going back to that Mother Teresa quote that she diagnosed the problems of the world of we've forgotten we belong to each other. I think that is a huge part of it. Also, according to Dr. Jean Twenge's work, the researcher out of San Diego, technology, I think, is another piece along with that anxiety, especially amongst perhaps younger populations. Certainly we're seeing that in the college setting, university setting, you know, not just locally, but across the country. University counseling centers, the rate of people utilizing those services has doubled, tripled, quadrupled over the last few years. So I would say, in my mind, it's got to be related to those two things. Relationship, the deep disconnection. It's ironic, we're so connected technology-wise,
Right.
but yet we're so disconnected at the same time. So I think that's part of it, and then technology.
Sure. Well, there's a lot of division between the haves and the have-nots too. I think that's probably contributing to it as well, probably.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if we could just remember we all are connected and we all belong to each other, I think that would go a long ways, and to truly believe that.
Thank you.
I just want to give a quick plug to the gratitude piece that Aaron did. So if you remember the story of Cain and Abel, and when Cain is mad, God's response to him is, "Why are you angry?" And the implication there is, you're fine. You have so much. You have so much to be grateful for. And so the way out of victimhood, which is of course where Cain ends up, is gratitude and vocation, but gratitude. So we feel like victims, I think, a lot. We've been trained to do that by our victim in chief, right? And so because we're victims, then we get to rewrite morality. That's the whole point of victimhood. I mean, he rewrites morality. He thinks killing is fine. And when we are victims, then we get to do things to our spouses, to our family, to other people that we think are fine because we're victims. But if we're grateful, that gratitude will get us out of that victimhood thinking. So this, by the way, this video will be posted on YouTube. You'll be able to get to it through the St. John website. And so if you want to come back and rewatch parts of it, or if you want to refer a family member, you're like, yeah, this person needs to watch it. It'll be up there. You can come check it out.
Good, because I especially like the part about the cognitive distortions and cognitive, whatever. There were 2 pages on cognitive things, and I thought, yep. Boy, does that apply.
Yep. And the important part, I think Aaron would agree with this, is that we all do some of those things sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
I'll do that at about 3:27 today when I'm watching the Vikings game. They'll never win.
Can you give us the name of the book again? The body is The
Body Keeps Score by
The Body Keeps Score.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
If you want to read one book on trauma or PTSD, that's the one to read. That's a good one.
Okay, thank you.
So it is 11:37. If there's maybe 1 or 2 more quick questions to give to Aaron, or I don't know if there's any follow-up things, if you need any more information, especially about the first half. If you were wondering how you might connect in with a mental health professional, I'm sure Aaron would be able to help you figure that out.
I really appreciated the consistency of going through it in such a logical manner. So that was nice that you were able to cover so much at once. Yeah, in my work, I use a lot of these techniques, and it's really helpful to see somebody else talking about it on a bigger scale. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for participating, and thank you, Aaron, for sharing this with us. This is really important stuff, and I'm happy that we recorded it. I've actually forgotten, like halfway through, I remember to hit record, so I recorded right away. So we'll have it, because I think as we go through the next month or so, we might need to reflect back on these things. So
yeah. Well, it's an honor to be here with all of you, and thanks, Eric, for asking me, Pastor Eric. Appreciate that.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you. And yeah, next Sunday for sure. I know we're off with adult forums. I'm gone, so we're having a fellowship time. You can come and fellowship, but we won't have a program per se. So, and then don't forget our Pi Social. Talk about being connected. This is the great use of technology, is staying connected. So Tuesday night, Aaron, we're doing our Thanksgiving Eve service, but then we're having a online virtual Pi Social.
Nice.
So the beauty is I'll be at home eating pie by myself because I'm on vacation, but you can bring a whole pie just for yourself.
Nice.
Okay. Well, thank
you. Goodbye for me.
Exactly.
I think just everybody being able to see each other here is good for our well-being too.
Definitely.
Yep. Well, thank you guys, and I wish you all a great day, and go Vikings.
Go Vikings. Take care.
Thank you.
See you, everybody. Bye-bye.